Okay, now hold on tight. The billionaire and richest man in Mexico now wants to switch 100% of his wealth into Bitcoin. And on the other hand, he's issuing a massive warning about the current stock markets. Bitcoin is the superior vehicle here. We have J.D. Vance making some major statements in a new interview where he takes on Bitcoin critics and makes it clear, hey, Bitcoin isn't speculation here. It's a legitimate asset, a store of value. We have Chinese think tanks now saying that Bitcoin is shifting from a speculative asset to a reserve asset. Do you know what that means? A reserve asset, or a global reserve asset, means that the market capitalization is going to increase massively. And we have the most profitable company in the world, TREZOR, which now actually wants to become the largest Bitcoin mining provider worldwide. So we're seeing more and more big players who are starting to get it. Retail investors are sleeping on this. Regular folks are snoozing, and the big players are lining their pockets like there's no tomorrow. I mean, just think about that. Billionaires are now taking 100% of their wealth, throwing it all into Bitcoin, while the average Joe is still just hanging out, getting drunk, and complaining about how stupid and unfair the world is. No, you need to take the power into your own hands now. Forget about all the fiat scam stuff. You can take control of your own power now with Bitcoin. You don't have to be a victim of the central bank anymore. Most people don't even know why they're getting rug pulled. They just realize, okay, somehow my life keeps getting more expensive. My cost of living keeps getting harder. I have to work more and more. They don't even realize how they're being scammed. But hey, you have to break through the illusion. Bitcoin is the tool here. And if you want Bitcoin to really take off now, drop me a like below so we can make even more bullish content here. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe right here now and turn off the media, turn off the TV, and watch some really cool content that will help you move forward, make you richer, make you wealthier, make you better looking, healthier, and sexier. And as I said, we're about to dive into the massive statements here, especially from Ricardo Salinas, the billionaire from Mexico, and also J.D. Vance. But first, let's actually take a look at two major moves. We now have a Chinese think tank that is actually saying Bitcoin is shifting from a speculative asset to a strategic reserve asset. And if you ask, a strategic reserve asset would mean something like, well, a reserve asset. There is the reserve, the world reserve currency, and a world reserve asset. For example, right now, both are the US dollar. Of course, it's possible that in the future, the US dollar might only remain the world's leading currency. That means you would still pay everywhere with the US dollar, but the world reserve asset, that spot, could be taken over by Bitcoin, at least for now. I mean, we're still a few years away from that, but that's definitely the trend that Chinese think tanks are seeing, where things are headed. I mean, I can absolutely agree with that. I wouldn't argue against it here. And now we have TREZOR, for example, who are basically saying, okay, hey, let's go. We're not just the most profitable company in the world. We're not just buying up huge amounts of Bitcoin. TREZOR is one of the biggest Bitcoin holders, but now we're investing billions in Bitcoin mining with the goal of becoming the largest Bitcoin miner in the world. And that's just incredible. On so many levels, adoption is moving forward everywhere. So whether it's in mining, whether it's with treasury companies, with strategic Bitcoin reserves, with products, really, maybe only with retailers, that's where adoption seems to have stalled a bit. But yeah, for example, we also have Michael Saylor saying that the Bank of England is about to buy Bitcoin. And I don't have to tell you what it would mean if central banks started buying Bitcoin on a large scale. And yes, before we get to J.D. Vance, let's take a quick look at what Ricardo Salinas, who has spoken positively about Bitcoin several times in the past, has to say now. This is really quite astonishing. And what's wild is that Ricardo Salinas has now published a book. And in this book, he basically explains why Bitcoin is superior to real estate. He basically exposes the real estate scam a bit. Or, well, it's not really a scam. But compared to Bitcoin, it kind of is, because you have way more risks, way more third-party risks, and so on. Sure, the leverage effect might be better, but we can clearly see that Bitcoin massively outperforms real estate. Ricardo Salinas has realized this, and even the Trumps have recognized it too. They say, if I want to sell a hotel, it takes me a year. With Bitcoin, I can just buy and sell in a matter of seconds. Why should I still invest heavily in real estate when I have so much more flexibility with Bitcoin? Ricardo Salinas sees it the same way. I've realized it too. For example, Jordan is another expert like that, who's now publishing a book explaining why Bitcoin is vastly superior to real estate, and how everything a real estate investor wants can be achieved much more easily with Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, you might still need a few financial instruments, but that's another story.
I'm not very positive about the economy in general. I think that anybody who has an investment portfolio should be extremely careful because of the way that stocks are valued today is ridiculous.
So, first of all, he's giving a very clear warning here. Hey folks, he's extremely bearish when it comes to traditional assets. Yes, we've already mentioned it, he's bearish on real estate, but he's also extremely bearish on stocks, because he simply says, hey, they're hopelessly overvalued, and all this AI stuff can of course shake up all the valuations. Sure, you could say, I'll just get myself a broadly diversified index or something like that, but even then, you often can't really outperform inflation. And if you do, it's only by a few percentage points, but you're not really making any real gains or anything like that. And the real gains, those are only to be found with Bitcoin.
I don't own a single stock other than gold miners, Bitcoin miners, and in a very small proportion.
Did you hear that? The richest man in Mexico doesn't own a single stock, not a single share, except for a few Bitcoin miners and a few gold miners. That means leveraged Bitcoin companies or leveraged gold companies. How crazy is that? And then you have these so-called financial experts who want to sell you some 70-30 portfolio or tell you, hey, just buy some broadly diversified portfolio. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you can have something like that too. I'm not trying to talk you out of it or anything. There's also nothing wrong with having small portions in a broadly diversified global portfolio or something like that. It's kind of crazy too. Back in the day, for example, people used to say the majority should be in a broadly diversified global portfolio and a small portion in Bitcoin. And now it's swapped. Now the small portion is in the broadly diversified stock portfolio and the majority is in Bitcoin. Like I said, these aren't my recommendations. They're actually the recommendations of the richest man in Mexico. He doesn't even have a broadly diversified stock portfolio. Instead, he has a very concentrated one with Bitcoin miners and gold miners. No MSCI World, no ACWI, no emerging markets, or whatever else is out there. No bonds either, as far as I understand. Just Bitcoin mining stocks and so on. And now let's take a look at what else he has to say.
In a very small proportion. And that's why my portfolio is 80% Bitcoin and Bitcoin exposure through miners and 20% gold and gold exposure through miners. And that's it. That's my investment portfolio, you know? But yeah, I don't know. Where do I still have gold? Well, I could probably move to 100% Bitcoin. But maybe I need a little bit more time, you know, being an old guy and all that.
Did you hear that? He's considering it here, saying maybe he could go 100% into Bitcoin, but he laughs and says he's an old guy and all that. He says he's still having a bit of a hard time with it, but basically he already knows it's the right decision. Otherwise, he wouldn't have laughed like that. But he still has that certain illusion in his head, the one you tend to have. Then you say, okay, you still want to do what you've always done in the past, so you just stick with what you used to do. But like I said, you don't have to go all in. This isn't a recommendation to go all in at all. Everyone has to decide that for themselves, because it's also about being able to sleep peacefully at night. That's probably also why he's not going all in here. If you just know, okay, maybe there's still a 0.5% chance that something could go wrong with Bitcoin, then maybe you still have a few gold miners, or maybe something else. Yeah, something different. I mean, he doesn't have much else left. Theoretically, he might still have a few gold miners, and that's it. I mean, now he has Bitcoin miners, and he has gold miners. And apparently, the gold miners make up 20% of his stock portfolio. He probably also has company shares. I can imagine that too. I'm also not sure whether I'm talking about his entire portfolio or just his liquid portfolio. It could also be that he's only talking about the liquid portfolio here. But in any case, I find it remarkable. Feel free to write in the comments below how you would assess the opinion of this rich man here in Mexico. And now let's take a look at JD Vance, who is also extremely bullish right now, the vice president in the USA.
Back from Vegas, the crypto speech was a hit. I know a lot of smart people love crypto.
Yeah, JD Vance also gave a speech in Las Vegas, which was already very bullish. Many have even accused him of mixing up Bitcoin and crypto here, saying he's not really a true 100% Bitcoiner. David Bailey, on the other hand, said he is 100% a Bitcoiner. The Winklevoss twins said the same. Now let's check out what he has to say here.
Smart people actually have reservations about it. For our audience, can you just kind of make the case for crypto and people who have, concerns and quite frankly don't even understand it? There are a lot of folks out there. I know a lot of people own it, but
yeah, of course. So look, I'm an owner of Bitcoin here, but I'm also the vice president of the United States. So
that's already bullish that he says, okay, not only does he like Bitcoin, but he actually owns Bitcoin, because that just shows he has skin in the game. And that just shows the confidence here. On the other hand, it also shows that the US really has an incentive to pump up the price of Bitcoin. I've told you before, look at how the incentives are set up. If BlackRock, the US, Trump, Vance, and so on all have the incentive to pump Bitcoin up, maybe you shouldn't necessarily bet against Bitcoin here.
President of the United States. So I want to be careful, but I think the core value proposition of cryptocurrency is that it's a way of transacting and a way of storing value in a modern digital age. Look, 100 years ago, if you wanted to go and buy something, you put a dollar bill on the table, you put a gold coin on the table. The value proposition of Bitcoin is that it can serve the same function, but in a digital age, a way that's secure, that's safer from fraud, that allows people to buy and sell and store value, but in a way that's consistent with the modern technological age that we live in. Now, having said
We've just had different ways to store value over time. In the past, people used shells, but those became inflated, then maybe salt, but that too became inflated. Then people used gold. Gold hasn't been inflated yet, but it could be in the future. We've just had different things that have been inflated again and again. Then, of course, we had paper money, which was inflated, and now we simply have the digital, modern form of storing value. And he recognized this very, very well here. And we also have to say that everything that has been digitized in the past has basically multiplied in market capitalization, whether it was communication or something else. By market capitalization, I don't necessarily mean just monetary value, but rather the network effect, how the network effects have just skyrocketed. Suddenly, it's much easier to make phone calls with smartphones than with smoke signals or carrier pigeons or something like that. All of a sudden, it's way more efficient to send messages over the internet than with carrier pigeons, and so on and so forth.
that, I fully accept there are risks to all of these things. There are always risks to new technologies. Our approach in the Trump administration is to say, let people innovate. Let people figure this stuff out on their own. If the critics of Bitcoin are right, I happen to think that they're wrong. That will eventually win out in the marketplace.
He says here, the critics and so on. He thinks they're wrong here. Shout out to all the critics as well. There are a few people who actually watch these videos just to always leave criticism. They comment under every video. Bitcoin is a scam. Bitcoin will go to zero. Buy gold, buy something else, whatever. There really are people. I won't name any names, but I always see it's the same accounts who comment every time. Oh, Bitcoin was created by the CIA. Oh, Bitcoin. Nothing works here at all. What kind of terrible thing is this? It'll soon drop to $10,000, and so on. And time again, the critics are simply wrong. We can just see it. There has already been so much criticism of Bitcoin. Please write in the comments below. When was criticism of Bitcoin actually justified? When did it ever really hold up in the long run? There was always short-term criticism. And in the long term, that criticism was proven wrong, because Bitcoin simply taught us otherwise, namely, that all the criticism in the past was basically irrelevant. Whether it was about being environmentally harmful, terrorism, yeah, what else was there? Too slow, somehow doesn't work at the state level, doesn't work for companies, I don't know, all nonsense.
Kids of Bitcoin are right, and I happen to agree with them.
If they make their case, that's eventually going to win out in the marketplace. What you should have is a dictatorial government that tells certain industries they're not allowed to do what they need to do. You've got to let people make these decisions on their own. And that's sort of been our approach. We want common sense regulatory regimes. We want to allow the cryptocurrency industry to participate in the mainstream of the economy. But then ultimately,
So I actually think that's a very, very smart approach. You're not saying, okay, now you all have to use Bitcoin, but rather, just figure it out for yourselves. Find your own way. We're creating a very, very loose set of rules. Maybe there will be a scam or two, but the market will take care of that. He's talking about the entire crypto market now, and then people will just figure it out for themselves. I think that's always the best way to have free markets here. You could even break up the currency monopoly by basically replacing the US dollar. That would make it even fairer. So we'd have a free money market, but he probably won't go that far. In any case, if you don't have a place to buy Bitcoin yet, I would definitely recommend you check out 20 on Bitcoin. It's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin safely, simply, and easily here in Europe. Use the code BitcoinHotel. You can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. It's an absolute recommendation. Super simple, easy, anyone can do it. They offer one-time purchases, savings plans, limit orders, lots of automatic wallet transfers. Definitely check it out. There are also explanations on how everything works in the app. So it's really intuitive and easy to understand. Check it out. Bitcoin app link. Use the code BitcoinHotel. The link is down in the description. See you next time. Peace out.